My hypothetical backstory gets its inspiration from a Polynesian folktale that I learned about through John Solo's Messed Up Origins series. I want to thank John Solo for doing the research. The story basically goes that Maui had an encounter with a local water goddess named, what was her name again?
Named Moana Nui Kalahua.
Thank you, John. Depending on who was telling the story, this water goddess would either take the form of a fish or a mermaid. The story goes that one day she caught Maui fishing uninvited in her territory and tried to steal his fish hook. He responded by grabbing her, throwing her up on land where she suffocated and died. My idea is that Maui accidentally killed a girl in a similar case of a practical joke going awry. This would lead to him stealing the heart of the Fidi, perhaps thinking that he can use it to buy his way back into her family's good graces. When his scheme blew up in his face, the gods punished him by placing him on an atoll, hanging a constellation in the form of a fishhook over it to mark his location, gave his fishhook to Tamatoa, knowing that the crab would not be able to access its magic but would still guard it jealously, and then they began the process of trying to fix the problem that he had created. The problem was, whenever one of them approached Ka, she would lash out at them, creating the storms and raising the sea monsters of which Grandma Tala would later speak of. Finally, they decided that a human might have a better chance, since a human would seem less threatening. Understandably, the gods first tried to enlist men to do the job, but Ka, no doubt sensing that a man had originally damaged her, continued to lash out. Finally, the gods decided that a woman or girl would be the better choice. By this point, they had gathered enough information from their previous failures to have a pretty good idea of what kind of a person they needed, and so began their search. Grandma Tala would make the short list because she had many of the right qualities. She was eccentric, kind, compassionate. She didn't particularly worry about what other people thought of her, and she loved her island and cared about her people's future. However, she seemed to be missing something important. When the gods told her of this decision, she accepted it with good grace and pledged to do what she could to help prepare the way for the one who would make the journey. This included making the boat that Moana would later take on her trip, small enough that a single person could operate it and sturdy enough to withstand the punishment that it would later have to endure, as well as telling the story of how Maui stole the heart of Te Fiti. Her son, Tui, got into his head that he should be the one to make the journey. Grandma Tala told him no, but he decided to go anyway. He and his friend were slapped down for their insolence. Instead of learning humility from this experience, Tui became obsessed with making sure that nobody crossed the reef for any reason. Around the same time, the girl that Maui had killed so many years before had found it in her heart to forgive him and petitioned the gods to allow her to enlist his help in restoring the heart of Te Fiti. She had some idea of what the Mother Goddess was going through and wanted help, and despite the trouble that Maui had caused, she believed that he was a good man who deserved a chance to make up for the harm that he had caused. The gods' reaction were, "Oh, who better to look to Ka in the face and say, 'Don't let yourself be defined by the wrongs that were done to you,' than someone who had risen above the wrongs that were done to her." And so the child was reborn as Moana, the granddaughter of Tala, who had been told of all this in advance. Moana's first test actually came when Tala told the story of how Maui had stolen the heart of Te Fiti. She deliberately made it as scary as possible in order to gauge the young child's reaction. And the young child acted with enthusiasm and excitement rather than fear as the other children, which is how they had hoped for. Moana's second test happened at the seashore. And it wasn't just that she chose to help the turtle, but how. She could have simply carried the little fellow back to the water, but she intuitively understood that the little fellow would have to make the journey under his own power, and she would have to limit her help to just shooing the gulls away. Pleased by both her compassion and her insight, the ocean parted to let her collect seashells, and then presented to her the heart of Te Fiti. This was when Tui came rushing down looking for her, and the ocean decided that it would be best to keep Tui out of the loop for the time being, and so she quickly sent Moana back to shore and entrusted the heart of Te Fiti to Tala. Despite Tui's interference, Tala was able to teach Moana how to dance with the ocean, how to see and hear the things that Tui himself had become too self-absorbed to notice. When Moana was of age to start assuming responsibilities in her tribe, she began learning about the problems which I suspect Tui had been ignoring for years. That something was starting to blight their food crops, that the fish were being driven away. When she made her first attempt to cross the reef, she was not ready, so of course the ocean turned her back. Probably a little bit rougher than it should have been, but in the end her spirits were not dampened. She still wanted to know why she was so restless, why she wanted to move beyond the reef. In response to this, Tala took her to the cave in which the boats that their ancestors had once used to cross the sea were now hidden. And it was there that she received the vision of the ancestors, and with it their blessing to proceed. Moana emerged from her vision absolutely excited to find out that they had once been voyagers. Then when she asked her grandmother why they had stopped voyaging, she filled her in on what had happened after Maui had stolen the heart of Te Fiti, and gave her the heart that had been entrusted to her. This heart had also been keeping Tala healthy despite her advanced years and all the hardships that she had had to endure. Her health quickly began to deteriorate. Some people say that Tui's reaction when his daughter entered the meeting they had called to discuss their dwindling food sources with the heart of Te Fiti was because he felt guilty for his friend's death. But he didn't just throw the heart away. He stormed out of the meeting, grabbed a torch, and said that he was going to burn the boats that might soon become their only lifeline. That goes beyond a guilty conscience. We see in his action a man who did not want his position being challenged by anyone, especially a girl. I see someone who had never been considered for the job of restoring the heart of the Fiti. I see wounded pride. Sena, on the other hand, recognized that they were facing a grave crisis, and that Moana was the only one who could rise to meet that crisis. And so she helped her daughter prepare for her journey. As Tala breathed her last breath, the gods appeared to present to her the thank you gift they had prepared for her. The body of a powerful young manta ray with which she could explore the oceans, and which the sea creatures would know to treat with the utmost respect. They then sent her off to see her granddaughter on her way, as befits a young woman on a mission from the gods. And then they had a little talk with Tui. Maui was spooked by Moana, not just because she was the first person he'd seen in over 1,000 years, but because she reminded him of the girl he had killed so many years ago, in what was probably a practical joke run amok. Their initial attempt to restore the heart failed because they were not playing their proper roles. When Maui left, Hala appeared to Moana, not because Moana was descendant of some god, goddess, or demigod, or demigoddess, but because Tala had taught her to see and hear such things. At the same time, the gods had taken Maui back to the island where he'd initially killed the girl, and told her that no, it was not his imagination, that was the same girl he had killed all those years ago. She had forgiven him, and to enlist his help to set right the mistakes he had caused so long ago. Galvanized by this knowledge, he returned to help her, ready to do whatever it took to ensure that she succeeded, including sacrificing his own life. When Moana realized that Ka and Te Fiti were one and the same, it caused the memories of her previous life to resurface, and with this new knowledge, she was able to use the heart to signal to Ka.
I have crossed the horizon to find you.
Not just the physical horizons, but the horizon between the world of the living and the dead.
I know your name.
The secret name, known only to the other gods, which they had shared with her.
They have stolen the heart from inside you, but this does not define you.
What brought Ka up short was realizing that she was being confronted by someone who had also been wronged by Maui, who had been angry for a very long time, but had risen above that anger. This is what caused Ka to settle down and allow Moana to restore her heart. When Te Fiti emerged from her cocoon, she took on the form of an adult likeness of Moana out of respect and gratitude towards the girl who had brought her back from madness. She also felt that she owed Moana far more than just a new boat, and she probably had a premonition of what was to come. And so she placed upon Moana a blessing that, years later, would summon Moana's ancestors, and, with their blessing, bring her back as a demigoddess. I also think that Maui should have been incinerated when Nala struck him with that lightning bolt instead of just him losing his tattoos, in order to give a sense of a price having been paid for their victory. That's just my opinion. What do the rest of you think?